Good day, everyone. I'm Dr. L. Jayanti Rebecca. Today, I'm going to give a lecture on plant secondary metabolites. So, this is an overview of what I'm going to talk today. First of all, we'll see what are plant secondary metabolites. Then next is the phenylalanine ammonia lyase, then callosynthase, then detoxification for plant pathogen resistance, and finally the ribosome inactivating proteins. What are secondary metabolites? The secondary metabolites, they are a large number of specialized compounds, and they do not aid in the growth and development of the plants. They are required for the plant to survive in the environment. So let's see the difference between the primary and the secondary metabolites. So the primary metabolites, they comprise all the metabolic pathways that are essential to the plant's survival. They are the proteins, carbohydrates, lipids present in the plant. The primary metabolites, they are compounds that are directly involved in the growth and development of the plant. Secondary metabolites are compounds produced in other metabolic pathways that, although important, and they are not essential for the functioning of the plant. Secondary metabolites are useful for defense purpose, and they give the pigmentation, color pigmentation. Secondary plant metabolites are also used in signaling and regulation of primary metabolic pathways. The plant hormones are used to regulate the metabolic activity, and they are also the secondary metabolites and activity within the cell, and they oversee all the development of the plant. The secondary metabolites, they also help in the plant to maintain an intricate balance with the environment, adapting to match the environmental needs. This picture shows the different types of different classes of secondary metabolites. You can see the 4 classes: terpenes, phenolics, nitrogen-containing compounds, and the sulfur-containing compounds. So if you see the terpenes, the most prominent ones are the monoterpenes and sesquiterpenes. You can see the lycopenes here. So lycopenes are the colored pigments here. We have the phenolics. The phenolics, the prominent ones are the tannins, lignins, the fumarins, and the flavonoids. And the nitrogen-containing compounds, you can see the alkaloids. So these are the majority of them are the drugs which are commonly used. Cocaine we can see here. And the sulfur-containing compounds, the prominent ones are the defensins and phytoalexins. And you can see the defensins are produced by the plants, or the young seeds produce it when it started to germinate. And during germination, it is very vulnerable for the attack by the fungal pathogens. So to protect itself from the fungal pathogens, defensins are produced in the growing seedling, germinating seedling. And this picture shows the example of the what happens during the biotic and the abiotic stress in a particular plant. And here you can see the redirection of the primary metabolism. So the energy utilized for the primary metabolism is directed towards the secondary metabolite production. So here, secondary, you can see the secondary metabolites are the terpenes, phenolic compounds, nitrogen compounds, which I have showed you in the previous slide. And here again, these enzymes, these are the enzymes like PAL, CHS, etc. These enzymes are nothing but they are the catalyzing. They catalyze the synthesis or the metabolism of the secondary metabolites. So again, this picture also shows another aspect of the secondary metabolite production. Like during the different types of abiotic stress like salinity, heavy metal, drought, UV, heat, and cold. So during this stress condition, what you have, we have the biosynthetic pathway of the secondary metabolites here. And here, those genes, on one side you can see the genes responsible or the genes expressed during the time of the secondary metabolite production. And the other side, you can see what are the products, what are the enzymes produced here, like the phenylalanine ammonia lyase, chalcosynthase, chichinate dehydrogenase, cinnamyl alcohol dehydrogenase, and polyphenol oxidase. So these enzymes also are very prominent here. So the genes and the enzymes, proteins are mentioned here. And these in turn, they result in the enhanced biosynthesis or accumulation of the phenolic compounds. And finally, this helps in these phenolic compounds, they help in the scavenging or the removal of the reactive oxygen species, and all these together ends up in the enhanced abiotic stress tolerance in the plants. So these are some of the phenolic compounds. The structure of the phenolic compounds is given here. Some of the gallic acid is there, caffeic acid, ferulic acid, muric acid, dopa is there, and we have the quercetin. So now we'll see about the phenylalanine ammonia lyase. So it's commonly called the PAL enzyme, and it is a key enzyme in the phenol synthesis pathway. The accumulation of phenols that act as phytoalexins is considered the primary inducible response in plants against a number of biotic and the abiotic stress. This enzyme, it catalyzes the deamination of phenylalanine. A carbon-carbon double bond is formed during the release of ammonia, yielding the transenamic acid. And this is shown in this picture here. You can see here, the structure of phenylalanine is given here. So, phenylalanine, in the presence of this phenylalanine ammonia lyase or the PAL enzyme, it catalyzes the conversion of this phenylalanine to transenamic acid. So this, in some grasses, tyrosine is converted to, instead of the phenylalanine, tyrosine is there in some kind of grasses. Tyrosine is converted to the 4-hydroxycinnamic acid, and it is an analog in an analogous way by the tyrosine ammonia lyase. That's a similar method. So this I'll be showing the next subsequent slides also. So the released ammonia is probably refixed by the glutamine synthase reaction. So PAL is one of the most intensively studied enzymes of plant secondary metabolism. The enzyme consists of a tetramer with subunits of 77 to 83 kilodalton. So four subunits, okay, tetramer. The formation of phenylpropanide phytoalexins after fungal infection involves a very rapid induction of the PAL enzyme. So PAL is inhibited by its product transenamic acid. So the previous slide you saw the transenamic acid. So you can see here the product inhibition in this case, in this reaction. And one more thing we want, like in this fungal infection, immediately after the fungus infects a particular plant, this PAL enzyme is produced, synthesized. The phenylalanine analog, aminoxy-phenylpropionic acid, which is shown in this picture here, this is also a very potent inhibitor of the PAL enzyme. So the structure is very similar with this the product here. So this product also, this compound also can inhibit the enzyme PAL. The occurrence of PAL, in which organisms it is present. So PAL activity has been detected in many species, monocots, dicots, gymnosperms, ferns, and also lycopods. In fungi, if you see, PAL activity has been detected only in a few basidiomycetes and eutromycetes, and in one ascomycete. And you can see in animals, it has not been reported. What are the molecular characteristics of PAL enzyme? The most reported PALs range in the size between 300 to 340 kilodalton in the native molecular mass. So this is a native state. So whatever we see in the previous slide was the STS or the denatured state. So some examples of the exemptions are reported masses of 152 kilodalton in Ocimum basilicum. So this is lesser. So 300 we have seen here. This is a common one, but some exceptions are the 152 kilodalton in Ocimum, and then 226 kilodalton in Bacterium, then Streptomyces, in 250 kilodalton in Helianthus anus, and 560 kilodalton in Alternaria. So these are some of the exceptions. So PAL is normally a homotetrameric protein consisting of 4 identical subunits. Heterotetrameric PAL. So generally it is a homotetramer, but there are again exceptions. So we can see heterotetrameric PAL also is a complex of 2 heterodimers. So two on the 4 tetramers are now as 2 dimers, 2 homodimers, has been reported from Helianthus anus to 58 kD and to 68 kD kilodaltons. So in the gel, if you see, you have two bands alone, 258 together and 268 kilodalton together. Rhodosporium thorulidus, PAL has been reported to be a dimer composed of 2 identical subunits with a mass of 80 kilodalton. The isoelectric points for a PAL are usually in the acid range from 2.5 to 6.3. So isoforms are also there with different PIs have been reported from some sources. The three isoforms range between Pi 4.8 and 5.4 in Leptospira maculis fungus, and several isoforms between Pi 5.1 and 6.1 in alfalfa, and two isoforms between Pi 4.8 and 5.4 in bean. It is the PAL active site and the enzyme mechanism. So if you see here, most PALs are considered to be hydrophobic. This property has led to the use of the hydrophobic affinity column chromatography for the purification of the PAL enzyme from cotton. PAL is one of the few amino acid transforming enzymes not containing the cofactor pyridoxal 5-phosphate. So instead of this particular cofactor, which is generally present in many enzymes, the PAL contains an unusual prosthetic group of dehydroxyhydroalanine. The role of this post-translationally modified amino acid is in catalysis is assumed to be the activation of the amino group of phenylalanine to form a better leaving group than ammonia. Modification of an electrophilic center at the active site of PAL by electrophilic reagents such as orohydride, cyanide, bisulfite, or nitromethane results in the complete inactivation of the enzyme. So we have already seen some inhibitors for this enzyme, and here also we can see that the mechanism of the formation of dehydroalanine has not been determined yet. The PAL amino acid sequences contain a serine residue that is completely conserved among the different species and is presumed to be associated with the active site of the enzyme. Let's see the functional properties of PAL. The PAL enzymes from many sources, especially from monocots and fungi, have activity towards L-tyrosine and can produce the trans-racemogaric acid. So here, this about this tyrosine is normally generally in all plants phenylalanine. From phenylalanine, PAL is synthesized. PAL uses that only to produce the phenolic compounds. But in case of grasses, the amino acid tyrosine is used. So this has been described as the tyrosine ammonia lyase or TAL activity. In most PAL preparations, TAL activity is very low. The PAL is to TAL ratio in PAL preparations varies from 4 to 20 in wheat and from 0.6 to 1.3 in bean. No TAL enzyme without PAL activity has been purified. So it is very similar. So it is very difficult to differentiate it or purify it separately. The Km value for L-phenylalanine have been reported to range from 0.011 millimole to 1.7 millimole. The pH optimum for PAL is generally in the range from 8.2 to 9. The temperature optimum for PAL has been reported to be 35 degrees centigrade in tobacco and 55 degrees centigrade in sunflower. Next, we'll see the callosynthase. So this is another enzyme which is also responsible, which is also very prominent during which protects a plant from during the abiotic stress. So callus is a plant polysaccharide. Its production is due to the glucan synthase like gene, GLS, in various places within a plant. So it is produced to act as a temporary cell wall in response to stimuli such as the stress or damage. So callus is composed of glucose residues linked together with beta-1,3 linkage and is termed as beta-glucan. So this particular callus, it is normally produced during wound also in many plants. So callus is widespread in higher plants in which it is a component of specialized cell wall or cell wall associated structures at particular stages of growth and differentiation. So callus is involved at multiple stages of pollen development as a structural component. It is also deposited at cell plates during the cytokinesis. This is synthesized normally during the wound or to protect the plant from other when the pathogen enters the plant. So this is the structure of the callus, the polysaccharide. So the structure of the polysaccharide here, and the synthesis of this is catalyzed by the enzyme callosynthase. So what is the role of callose with relation to the plasmodesmata? This is commonly available in the plant. So in addition, callose can be deposited at plasmodesmata to regulate the cell-to-cell movement. So of molecules by controlling the size exclusion limits of the plasmodesmata. So callose is very important for the permeability of the plasmodesmata in plants. The plant's permeability is regulated by the plasmodesmata callose. The PDC is made up of callose synthase and broken down by beta-1,3 glucanases. The amount of callose that is built up at the plasmodesmatal neck, which is brought about by the interference of callose synthase and beta-1,3 glucanases, determines the conductivity of the plasmodesmata. So callose deposition can also be induced by wounding, infection of pathogens, aluminum, abscisic acid, and other physiological stress. So this deposition occurs in the plasmodesmata, thus limiting the movement of the cell sap. So here you can see the pictorial representation of the movement of the sap in the plasmodesmata. So the absorption of water by roots of the plant takes place in two ways: active absorption and the passive absorption. In the active absorption, the water enters the cell sap and passes from one cell to another. This type of movement where the protoplasm is involved is called the symplast. So this we have studied in the school also. In passive absorption, the active absorption is by the symplast. In the passive absorption, water moves through the apoplast of the root. The apoplast path includes the cell wall and the intercellular spaces. So here we can see the plasmodesmata, and within this, in this area only, the callose actually in from between one cell to another, that the gap or the movement of the water is prevented or reduced or regulated by the deposition of the callose in the plasmodesmata. So this is a picture which shows the when the callose is deposited at various stages, physiological stages of the development of the plant. So you can see during the pollen development also callose is deposited, and pollen tube growth, biotic stress, abiotic stress, plasmodesmata regulation, etc. Okay. So it is not only deposited during the time of biotic and abiotic stress, even during other physiological development of the stage, stages of the plant also, the particular callose is deposited. So callose structure and synthesis. So callose is a linear homopolymer made up of beta-1,3 linked glucose residue with some beta-1,6 branches, and the callose biosynthesis uses UDP glucose as a substrate. The biochemical evidence and molecular studies in several plant species indicate that callose is synthesized by a class of enzymes termed the callose synthase. The callose deposition under stress. So callose is deposited at the plasma membrane and cell wall interface as one of the many responses of the plant tissue to a range of wound stress. So observable callose deposition occurs within the minutes of damage by mechanical, chemical, or ultrasonic treatments, and in physiological or biotic stress induced by plasmolysis, raised or lower temperatures, and microbial infection, respectively. So in all these cases, the callose has been seen to deposit. Next, we'll see the detoxification for pathogen resistance. So this is many pathogenic bacteria produce the toxins that induce symptoms characteristic of the associated disease in the plant host. So plant will produce the bacteria produces toxins, even the fungus produces toxins. Many are in the form of certain enzymes. So these toxins are not the primary determinants of the host range, as sometimes occurs with the fungal toxins in the plants. So bacterial phytotoxins may be primary determinants of disease by suppressing the host resistance mechanisms. It allows the systemic multiplication by the pathogen in addition to causing the economically damaging symptoms. So this kind of toxin accumulation in plant is not a good sign, and it hinders the consumption of these food products. of fruits and vegetables. There are indications that genetic modification for increased resistance to toxins involved in the pathogenesis may be developed as a novel mechanism of disease resistance. So the phytoalexins. So phytoalexins are nothing but they are elicited microbial plant defenses that are resistant to pathogen degradation, provide the producing plant with higher disease resistant level. And conversely, the transformation by pathogens make plants more susceptible to the disease. So these phytoalexins are produced by the plant to counter the enzymes or the toxins produced by the pathogen. So paldoxins are nothing but they are inhibitors of the fungal detoxifying enzymes. They are examined as a potentially sustainable strategy to control the plant pathogenic fungi. So this picture shows the different types of toxins produced during the plant parasite interaction. So you can see the general toxins and the specific toxins. The general toxins are classified into non-host specific toxins and the non-host selective toxins. And under this, we can see some examples: staph toxin, fasciolotoxin, tentoxin, and cercosporin. And the specific toxins are classified into host-specific toxins and host-selective toxins. And examples here is Victorin, T-toxin, Hexitoxin, and the AM toxin. So toxins again here we can see the different toxins present in the produced during the plant pathogen interaction, and the pathogen involved in that, the category of the pathogen as well as the disease. So you can see the fumaric acid, which has produced the pathogen here is Rhizopus, and the Rhizopus is a fungus, and the disease you can see is the almond hull root disease. Alternaria acid is another toxin produced by Alternaria, which is also a fungi, and the disease is the leaf spot disease. And fusicotoxin is again Fusicoccum amygdalae, and this is also a fungi, and it produces the twig blight disease. So you have plenty of toxins like the pyrrolidine, serotolmin, then a very common one is the digitoxin. Okay, so these toxins are also present, and you can see here the fungi as well as the bacteria which produces it, and the different types of disease or symptoms here. Name of the disease is mentioned here, and the organisms also. So here you can see the paldoxins. So before going to this paldoxins, I'll tell you what is a paldoxin. So paldoxins are the plant fungal pathogens, and they are normally the inhibitors of the fungal toxin. So plant fungal pathogens are able to elude the plant defense mechanisms using a variety of strategies that include the production of enzymes with diverse catalytic activities. So fungus normally produces plenty of enzymes as elicitors. They are commonly called the elicitors, and these elicitors are the ones which enable the plant also to produce certain kind of phytoalexins. One such phytoalexin is this paldoxin. So the phytoalexin detoxification inhibitor. So this particular fungus or the pathogen tries to catabolize or break down the phytoalexins produced by the plant, so that the fungus or pathogen can enter the plant or enter the plant. So what happens? This phytoalexin detoxification inhibitors, or it's called the paldoxin. Phytoalexin detoxification inhibitors, which are the plant's natural defenses, block access to the chemical pathways that fungi use to weaken the plant's resistance. The paldoxins, they harm only the disease-causing organisms. So we'll go to the previous slide. Here this picture, it shows the fungal pathogen which produces the detoxifying enzymes against the crucifer here. Crucifer elicited metabolic defense. The crucifers are here. It produces some kind of metabolic defenses, and against that, to counter that, the fungal pathogen has produced the detoxifying enzymes. Similarly, the crucifer has produced the phytoalexins. These phytoalexins, like paldoxin, the phytoalexins produced by the this plant and against the fungal pathogen. But fungus, it tries to stop this phytoalexin, or tries to break down this phytoalexin. But this paradoxin, it inhibits the enzymes, these particular enzymes, like the detoxifying enzymes are inhibited by the phytoalexin detoxifying inhibitors, these are enzymes. Okay. So finally, the pathogen will be inactive. The next is the similar one is the ribosome inactivating protein. So this also is a defense against the pathogen. So ribosome inactivating protein, the RIP, is a protein synthesis inhibitor that acts as at the ribosome. A number of bacterial and plant toxins act by inhibiting the plant protein synthesis in eukaryotic cells. The RIPs form a family of well-characterized toxins which specifically and irreversibly inhibit the protein synthesis in eukaryotic cells by enzymatically altering the 28S rRNA of the large 60S ribosomal subunit. The most are produced by plants and are thought to represent a defense mechanism against the viral or parasitic attackers. Notable examples of the plant-derived RIPs include ricin, abrin, and the saporins. So other RIPs such as Shiga toxins are instead produced as virulence factors by pathogenic bacteria in order to aid their survival and replication in the host organisms. The injection, inhalation, or ingestion of some of these toxins, or all these are ingestion is just well breathing. So toxins, example ricin, abrin, and Shiga toxins, can be lethal even in small doses and triggers irreversible inhibition of post-cellular protein synthesis accompanied by acute necrosis of affected tissues and organs. So these are all very highly toxic. So ricin has been classified as a potential category B biological warfare agent and a likely source of the bioterrorism. So all these toxins are structurally related. So RIPs have been of considerable interest because of the potential use conjugated with monoclonal antibodies as immunotoxins to treat cancer. The trichoxanthin has been shown to have potent activity against the HIV-1 infected T cells and macrophages. So these toxins are used as drugs also. So examples in RIPs include abrin, betin, ricin, saporin, Shiga toxin, spiroplasma proteins, trichoxanthin, viscomin, and pokeweed antiviral protein. So what is the types of RIPs based on the protein domain composition? So there are type 2, type 1, type 2, and type 3. So type 1 PC are these type of RIPs are polypeptides composed of A domain. So here you have A, B domains, different types of domains here. And this type 1 composed of A domain. And this is the site of N-glucosidase activity. The type 2 are composed of A domain with a similar catalytic activity to type 1 RIPs as well as a B domain with a lectin binding properties. So two domains are present in the type 2 A domain, which is similar to the to our type 1, which is N-glucoside activity domain, and the other side is the other one is the B domain, which is the lectin binding has the lectin binding property. These properties facilitate entry into the cell, thus making type 2 particularly cytotoxic. And the A and B domains are fused together by the disulfide bonds. The RIPs too are considered potent toxins. The B domain is able to bind galactosyl moieties of the cell surface, which facilitates entry into the cell, where the A domain can perform its catalytic activity on the 28S rRNA in the cytosol. Next is the type 3 RIPs. So here if you see, they are separated into two subgroups. One subgroup contains the same original RIP A domain and a C terminal with unknown functionality. The other subgroup is similar to the type 1, but contains a site for inactivation. So here, this is very much similar to the type 1. So we have seen the type 1, type 2, and the type 3 with containing the A and the B domain. So here this type 3 RAP it exists in both bacteria and the plants. Only a minority of the RAPs are toxic to humans when consumed. And proteins of this family are found in the vast majority of plants used for human consumption, such as rice, maize, and barley. They are less toxic to the human beings. So this is this picture, like what I told you just now. The type 1 having a polypeptide activity or with enzymatic activity and glucoside activity. We are having an A chain. And the type 2, there is an A chain as well as a B chain with a disulfide bond. And here you can see you have the carbohydrate binding protein or binding domains and the carbohydrate side chain. The carbohydrate binding protein, a lectin binding protein, which I showed you earlier. And this has the polypeptide with lectin activity. And it has also the carbohydrate side chain. The type 3 is the polypeptide with the unknown activity. So here A, B, and the like first one is the polypeptide with the enzymatic activity. The next is the type 2 with the polypeptide with the lectin activity. And finally the polypeptide with the unknown activity. So this picture shows the again the ribosome inactivating protein RAPs. The various functions or the properties of it. It has the antibacterial activity against the bacteria, functioning against the bacteria. It has antifungal activity that functions against fungi. It has the antiviral activity that functions against the virus. It has the insecticidal activity against insect, and the transgenic is used for the transgenic technology for plants. The systemic response resistance also is obtained here. Helps in the phytohormone signaling. Okay. So these are the various properties or the functions of the ribosome inactivating proteins. So let's see a recap of what we have learned today. So we saw initially about the primary plant secondary metabolites, and in this we studied about the difference between the primary metabolites and the secondary metabolites, and how they are useful, or different types of secondary metabolites I had shown you, and how they are useful or for the defense mechanism in plant, and what is phenylalanine ammonia lyase, and how it helps in the synthesis of the phenolic compounds, the phenol bicentric pathway, and the amino acids responsible are the substrate, the molecular properties of it. It's a Km value, its inhibitors, and its PI, its molecular weight, both in the native state and the denatured state, and some of the different types of phenylalanine ammonia lyase, different from different plants and bacteria, fungus, etc. And next, I've told you about the callosynthase, and the callosynthase in this case, you can see I've told you the reasons why the callose has been synthesized, and it is not only during the stress, it is also produced during the normal activity of the plant, like pollen development, and also during mitosis, it is produced, and it is even during the movement of like to prevent the or to control the regulate the movement of water or sap between the cell to cell, also is regulated by this callosynthase, or callose deposition, which is catalyzed by the callosynthase enzyme. And we have seen the detoxification for the pathogen resistance, and how the paldoxins or the phytoalexins are produced by the plant, and to counter that, some of the enzymes are produced by the fungus, and how those fungus are inhibited by this kind of these paldoxins. And then we have seen the ribosome inactivating proteins. These are also produced by the plant, and how it is found to be toxic and to the various pathogens, and its functioning also, and the types of RAPs also have been mentioned here. Thank you so much.